Long before political borders were carved across the North American continent, a vast ecological domain stretched across the northwestern plains. This was Kitaowahsinnoon, the ancestral home of the Siksika Niitsitapi, the Blackfoot Confederacy. At the northern perimeter of this domain stood the Siksika, or the Blackfoot proper. The name itself derives from the Blackfoot words Sik, meaning black, and Ika, meaning foot, a reference to the dark-dyed moccasins worn by their people. As the northernmost guardians of the plains, the Siksika governed thousands of square miles of semi-arid prairie, living in alignment with the seasonal migrations of the American bison. Prior to the 19th century, Siksika society was organized into 36 distinct clans, representing a self-sustaining population of approximately 18,000 people. They were pedestrian hunters who used dogs to pull their travois across the plains. However, the 18th century sparked a complete geopolitical and military transformation. With the introduction of horses, which the Blackfoot named Ponokamita, or elk dogs, and firearms, the Siksika Niitsitapi emerged as a formidable military power on the northwestern plains, blocking foreign fur traders from trapping in the rich upper tributaries of the Missouri River for over 25 years. Central to Siksika governance and social order were the 7 sacred societies, Sitsiisi, which maintained discipline, directed the annual buffalo hunt, and preserved complex spiritual ceremonies. These societies remain foundational to Siksika identity and are formally represented in the nation's modern heraldry. The 7 traditional societies include the Horn Society, Atsitsias, the Crow Society, the Black Soldier Society, the Matoki Society, the Sacred Women's Society, the Prairie Chicken Society, the Brave Dog Society, and the Matsiyiks, the Braves. Each society carried specific ceremonial responsibilities, sacred bundles, and songs entrusted to them by the Creator. The apex of the Siksika ceremonial calendar occurred during midsummer, when individual hunting bands gathered for the Okan, sun dance ceremony. This gathering reinforced tribal cohesion, allowed councils of chiefs to confer on political and military matters, and renewed the spiritual bond between the Niitsitapi and the land. By the mid-19th century, ecological and demographic crises converged upon the Siksika Nation. Between 1864 and 1870, recurring smallpox epidemics devastated the Blackfoot population, weakening their defensive capabilities against rival groups and incoming settlers. Simultaneously, the near extinction of the American bison by commercial skinners destroyed the economic foundation of the plains life. In this era of turmoil, a diplomat emerged whose strategic vision would alter the history of the Canadian West, Isapo Muxika, known to history as Chief Crowfoot. On September 22, 1877 at Blackfoot Crossing, Chief Crowfoot and the leaders of the Blackfoot Confederacy signed Treaty No. 7 with representatives of the Canadian Crown. To the Canadian government, the treaty was a legal land surrender designed to clear the path for the Canadian Pacific Railway and Euro-Canadian agricultural settlement. To Crowfoot and the Siksika, it was a sacred peace pact intended to secure food rations, land protection, and agricultural training during an era of starvation. Crown representatives assured the chiefs that the agreement would endure as long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the water flows. Yet within years, those promises were overshadowed by government neglect and administrative coercion. Isapo Muxika, Chief Crowfoot, was born in 1830 to Kainai parents, Istawunepata, Pax a knife, and Axkap Sepi, attack towards home. When Crowfoot was 5 years old, his father was killed in battle. His mother subsequently married Akai Nekasimi, many names, of the Siksika Nation, leading to young Crowfoot's adoption into the Siksika band. He proved his bravery in numerous military engagements, receiving the adult name Isapo Muxika, Crow Indians' Big Foot. By the 1870s, Crowfoot had developed into an exceptional diplomat and leader, recognized by both Indigenous confederacies and government authorities. When the Canadian federal government sought to negotiate Treaty 7 in 1877, the Blackfoot Confederacy faced strategic choices. The sudden collapse of the bison herds created severe famine across the plains, while the influx of illegal whiskey traders brought social turmoil. The arrival of the Northwest Mounted Police in 1874 offered temporary stability by curtailing the whiskey trade, prompting Crowfoot to view the Crown as a potential partner in maintaining peace. Crowfoot selected Blackfoot Crossing, a historic river ford and traditional council ground, as the site for the treaty negotiations. The terms of Treaty 7 established specific reserve lands for the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Stoney Nakoda, and Tsuut'ina nations. However, fundamental differences in worldview, translation limitations, and federal policies led to systemic land loss, economic restriction, and institutional control under the Indian Act. In 1883, 6 years after the signing of Treaty 7, an Anglican missionary named Reverend John William Timms arrived on the Siksika Reserve. His arrival marked the beginning of an era of state-sponsored cultural suppression. By 1886, the Church of England established the Old Sun boarding school, ironically named after Chief Old Sun, a respected Siksika leader and Treaty 7 signatory. For nearly a century, Old Sun operated as an institution of forced assimilation, where Siksika children were separated from their families, forbidden from speaking their language, and subjected to physical and emotional abuse. Life at Old Sun was characterized by strict discipline. Children who spoke Siksika were severely punished. Inside the boiler room, behind a locked metal door, sat an isolation cell where students were confined for days. The school's surrounding farm was presented by administrators as agricultural education, but survivors recall it as forced child labor that kept them out of the classroom. Yet Siksika resistance was evident from the beginning. In 1895, when a diphtheria epidemic swept through the school and Reverend Timms refused to release dying children to their parents, the community revolted, driving Timms off the reserve. In recent years, the physical structure of Old Sun has become a focus of digital archaeology and heritage preservation. Researchers from the University of Calgary, working alongside Siksika elders and survivors, utilize terrestrial LiDAR laser scanners, drone photogrammetry, and spatial mapping to create a high-precision 3D digital model of the building and its surrounding grounds. This digital twin documents spaces of confinement, such as the boiler room isolation cell, creating a permanent record of the physical site. By combining spatial technology with survivor oral histories, the project ensures that the historical realities of Old Sun are preserved for future educational research. While residential schools targeted Siksika children, the federal government simultaneously targeted the nation's land base. In 1910, under policies led by Minister of the Interior Frank Oliver, the Department of Indian Affairs pressured the Siksika Nation into surrendering 115,204 acres of their reserve land, over a third of their total territory. The surrendered lands were sold to incoming settlers, while 12,522 acres were transferred to the Canadian Pacific Railway to construct the Bassano Dam, depriving the Siksika of valuable surface and mineral rights. For over 60 years, the Siksika Nation pursued legal claims against the federal government, maintaining that the 1910 surrender was illegal, deceptive, and breached treaty obligations. That legal battle culminated in December 2021, when 77% of eligible Siksika voters approved a historic global settlement agreement. On June 2, 2022, at Blackfoot Crossing, the federal government and the Siksika Nation signed the agreement, providing $1.3 billion in financial compensation and granting the nation the right to purchase back up to 115,000 acres of land on the open market to restore their reserve boundaries. The 1910 land surrender was driven by early 20th century government policies aimed at freeing up Indigenous lands for agricultural expansion and infrastructure development. Minister of the Interior Frank Oliver utilized administrative amendments to the Indian Act to facilitate the removal of First Nations from valuable agricultural lands across Western Canada. In the case of the Siksika Nation, the government surrendered 115,204 acres without providing adequate information or fair compensation to band members. The expropriation of 12,522 acres for the Canadian Pacific Railway's Bassano Dam severely disrupted the local ecosystem and cut the Siksika off from long-term mineral royalties and surface rights. Today, the site of former residential school trauma stands as an institution of community learning. In 1971, the Siksika Nation assumed control of the Old Sun facility, converting the building into Old Sun Community College. In the same classrooms where the Blackfoot language was once suppressed, Siksika adults now study Siksika complete academic upgrading, and pursue post-secondary degrees. The nation has repurposed the facility into a center for cultural revitalization.